there's efforts to manipulate everything going on. And I think particularly in the Bitcoin space, people need to decide if it's going to be something that they want to let be co-opted by Wall Street, or if people in the Bitcoin space want to fight for it to be the tool it was originally marketed and sold to people as a tool for, sovereignty and financial freedom. Because if it ceases to become that and becomes like the chief means of asset storage for BlackRock and associated institutions, for them to, usher in this new global financial governance system and financial system that they want to impose on everybody. I mean, what does that mean for the values that supposedly underpin Bitcoin in the first place? And, what are we?
In recent years, Bitcoin's popularity has soared, attracting attention from many. It's seen as a way to handle money without banks or governments. Bitcoin's decentralized nature, built upon blockchain technology, was intended to empower individuals by providing an alternative to traditional financial systems plagued by corruption and manipulation. But now, with the recent release of Bitcoin ETFs, there is a possibility for this revolutionizing asset to be controlled and its original purpose destroyed. In a recent discussion with Peter McCormack and Mark Goodwin, Whitney Webb gives us an urgent warning regarding the current situation of Bitcoin and other markets that may not be as rosy as they seem. While the price of Bitcoin is rising, Webb expresses concern about the increasing involvement of Wall Street institutions and financial interests in the Bitcoin market. Bitcoin may be transforming from its original decentralized nature into a financial asset dominated and controlled by traditional financial institutions. And this means a shift towards a more centralized and institutionalized form of Bitcoin ownership and trading, where large financial players exert significant influence over the market dynamics. Whitney Webb highlights concerns regarding the influence of figures like Larry Fink of BlackRock, which now has its own Bitcoin ETF. Larry Fink is currently involved in the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It is said to tackle climate change by mobilizing the financial sector towards net zero carbon emissions. But this UN-sponsored effort, according to Webb, actually aims to change the financial system under the guise of sustainable development, potentially benefiting BlackRock's expansion. Companies and elites with blatantly selfish motives are what Webb warns us to be cautious about, as they are dangerous to the integrity of Bitcoin. Let's take a look at clips of Whitney Webb as she exposes the dark truths behind all this hype surrounding the markets. As we look at these clips, we encourage your support. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue to provide you with insightful updates on crypto finance. We hope you enjoy the video.
Well, my policy tends to be don't trust Wall Street giants, because they become that powerful on Wall Street because they, are pretty cutthroat and criminal, because that's how you rise to the top of that particular sphere. There's efforts to manipulate everything going on. And I think particularly in the Bitcoin space, people need to decide if it's going to be something that they want to let be co-opted by Wall Street, or if people in the Bitcoin space want to fight for it to be the tool it was originally marketed and sold to people as a tool for, sovereignty and financial freedom. Because if it ceases to become that and becomes like the chief means of asset storage for BlackRock and associated institutions, for them to, usher in this new global financial governance system and financial system that they want to impose on everybody. I mean, what does that mean for the values that supposedly underpin Bitcoin in the first place? And, what are we doing here, and what are we supporting? These questions need to be asked. And I think it's very important that, people that want to oppose the Wall Streetization, I guess, of Bitcoin sort of look at how what can be done to allow its functionality as a currency for that to be able to scale, and sort of avoid the efforts to sort of make it only a commodity in the hands of the same people on Wall Street that manipulate the prices of all other commodities for their benefit. I mean, do we really want to let Bitcoin become one of those heavily manipulated commodities that serve the Wall Street bankers, especially when Bitcoin was created as a way to hedge against irresponsible monetary policy and Wall Street corruption? I think, we're at a stage where it's very important to, ask ourselves what we're doing and to take a stand accordingly. Well, Larry Fink is someone who's obviously a member of the elite, and he's also a person who throughout his entire career has been pretty obsessed with risk management. So I think, whatever this new financial system is, it's that he is, part of this group that's proposing this, ultimately is about trying to enable BlackRock to continue its massive expansion to own, essentially everything with, as little risk to them as possible, which obviously a lot of the stuff that Fink is pushing for is part of this broader system that the world's being pushed into under the guise of sustainable development that includes things like digital IDs and carbon markets and all of that, setting something up where it's will be very difficult to challenge BlackRock's financial prominence and dominance, really, and anything that Fink and others would view as a risk to, their current trajectory, I guess. They don't really have to worry about people or movements like that as they enter into and sort of impose upon us these new systems, which includes, some of these forms of digital control, like the CBDC and their private sector equivalents, for example, programmable, surveillable money, and tied into the digital ID thing. All of this, as is noted in the article, is meant to interface with global carbon markets and the multilateral development banks that Fink has been targeting in particular through GFANs, and also BlackRock itself has been pretty focused on them. They're seeking to, the World Bank is developing climate wallet functionality and a lot of this other infrastructure on which global carbon markets would rely, and are also sort of attempting to become the main data storage for the digital ID system as well. So a lot of big moves are being made through these institutions for part of this new global financial governance system, as GFANs calls it.
As Webb stated before, many sinister things are going on in the markets that we need to become aware of. Webb also expresses concerns about powerful influences, particularly in independent media, where money from intelligence-linked elites can alter narratives and agendas. Deceptive tactics are being made by entities like the World Economic Forum to engineer consent and trust among the public for policies such as digital IDs and programmable surveillance money. In this situation, complacency and manipulation are possible, so there is a need for people to remain vigilant and discerning in the face of orchestrated efforts to manipulate public opinion and perception, especially regarding contentious issues like digital IDs and CBDCs. Let's take a look at more clips of Whitney Webb as she explains her take regarding the matter.
I also think it's problematic that there's a lot of people in independent media that are funded by a lot of these intelligence-linked oligarchs that are responsible for a lot of this crap. Peter Thiel, not to pick on him, but he's definitely funding a lot of different prominent figures in independent media. I believe Tucker Carlson's new media company has some Thiel funding, for example, behind it. And I think people need to remember that when the WEF goes out and says they're rebuilding trust, and you look at that and you go, oh, well, there's no way I'm going to trust you guys, they're not necessarily talking about themselves. There's a deliberate effort to engineer consent and trust among the populace for these particular policies that they feel like they need to implement, that all national governments essentially agree about. Things like digital ID, programmable, surveillable money, and all of that. And if a particular population, such as in the US, pushes against the public sector implementing that, like with CBDCs, for example, there's an obvious effort to try and sell what is functionally the same thing as a private sector entity, and there's really no discussion of that in the CBDC debate in independent media at all, of the threat of JP Morgan and deposit tokens or tokenized deposits, which is definitely a thing that all the Wall Street banks, the big ones, are pushing into. The idea of a bank issued stable coins and all of that as an alternative to the digital dollar, and things of that nature. All of that can be just as programmable and surveillable as a CBDC. So all of this rhetoric that we're against CBDCs seems to be, sort of to make people feel like they've won, in a sense, and that they're going to get something better for, freedom and financial freedom and sovereignty. But functionally, it's just as bad, if not worse, right? I think people need to keep in mind that there are intense efforts to psyop people into buying into these systems. They want people complacent. They want people to feel like the opposition has won, to these agendas, but really they agree about the plan at the end of the day. The type of implementation, maybe there's differences, slight differences, I would argue, but ultimately it's the same. And I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, after COVID or, after this event, like I'm awake, I get it. But really there are an unprecedented amount of, just an insane amount of money has gone into manipulating how people perceive events. And with an effort to manufacture consent for these systems that are widely opposed in places like the US, specifically among conservatives and right-leaning people and libertarians, like the digital ID CBDC integrated system. They're looking for different ways to sell that to you. And people have to be very cognizant and aware of that, because I think if they're not, they'll be more susceptible. And I think there will definitely be an effort at some point to sort of lure those people in particular into a space of complacency, feeling like they've won, because of course in the US, those are the people that own the guns, right? And they definitely, in implementing systems that these people oppose, they want those people to be as compliant as possible. And the best way to do that is to make them think that they're winning.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely going to be some hoodwinking there as this rhetoric sort of shifts to the right. But again, it's just like the left-right paradigm and the public-private paradigm that we discussed earlier. And I think people need to be really aware of that, as well as on social media as well, where just as an example, in the US, the US military has invested for over 10 years. I think people need to be more aware that there is an effort to manipulate opinion, and it's not all just going to be siloed on the left. There's definitive efforts to manipulate people on the right from the exact same actors. It's just they're using different figures and different talking points, but they're trying to lead us all to the same spot. So people need to really become critical thinkers again. I think independent media, to an extent, doesn't necessarily promote that, but they really should. You shouldn't just take people's words for things. You should look at the evidence. You should look at source links and articles and do your own research to an extent, and not just believe talking heads that are being promoted to you by the algorithm, whether it's the Twitter algorithm or the YouTube algorithm or Rumble or whatever. It ultimately comes down to being able to assess the information as objectively as you can and reach your own conclusion. And then ultimately, as far as how we get out of this, and the more broadly thing, I'll reiterate some of the stuff we talked about last time, Peter, which is the need for localization and decentralization. Mm-hmm. Building parallel systems, and not just in the financial sense, but really in all senses, so that if you are like me and you have a red line about joining the digital ID, CBDC, bank issued stablecoin thing, you can say no and build something or participate in a parallel system that does not engage with that. Because the more of us that resist onboarding to that system, the better off we'll be.
With all of that said, Webb tells us not to be too complacent, emphasizing the intense efforts to manipulate public perception and manufacture consent for widely opposed systems. It's important to remain vigilant and aware of the manipulative tactics employed, especially as rhetoric shifts. Being able to recognize the complexities of the political and private sector dynamics will be able to help us make informed financial decisions. Webb also emphasizes the need for decentralization and localization as a means of resistance against centralized control, particularly in the realm of finance. She suggests building parallel systems that operate independently of centralized entities and their ideas of digital IDs and bank-issued stablecoins. By abstaining from participating in systems that compromise individual freedoms, and by actively engaging in alternative systems, individuals can collectively mitigate the influence of centralized control and safeguard their autonomy. Meanwhile, Jim Bianco, president and macro strategist at Bianco Research, has also expressed his criticisms regarding the launch of spot Bitcoin ETFs. According to him, Bitcoin ETFs show a failure of sorts, suggesting that they are a way of integrating cryptocurrency into the existing system, which is quite flawed. Despite this, he spoke positively about the potential of decentralized finance as a different option in the financial world. BlackRock's IBIT has seen significant net inflows totaling $5 billion, surpassing its competitors by a large margin. Comparing the inflow volumes of BlackRock and Fidelity, it's clear that these two asset management companies are dominating the Bitcoin ETF market, propelling the industry forward much like the broader financial market ETFs. Do you agree with Whitney Webb's insights? What steps do you think individuals can take to protect the integrity of Bitcoin and other decentralized systems in the face of increasing institutional influence. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content and want to stay updated on the latest insights into crypto finance, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue to deliver insightful content. Stay tuned for more informative videos, and until next time, take care, stay informed, and be happy investing.